Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Life Administration Podcast. My name is Ryan Talon, and with me, as always, is
Leslie Loftus. Hello, and today is one of our third guest episode, I guess. We have my friend Eileen Harrell, and today we're going to be talking about disaster preparedness that's not a pandemic because, what?
So let me tell you why I trust Eileen.
Okay.
She has more notes for this episode than we have ever written for all of our episodes.
Correct.
In the history of the world.
Correct. She also sent them to me earlier, so they're kind of in our outline. So you'll be hitting her, and then she can go.
So how do you guys know each other?
We are friends from church, and actually we met. We started to become friends after the reason that she is joining us today, because Eileen has some she learned some of this disaster preparedness at the School of Bitter Experience in 2011, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, because I remember it was about 10 years ago. Summer of 2011, it was dry. Well, it's always hot here in Houston, but it happened to be dry. And our house got hit by lightning, and in 2 hours it was gone?
Yes.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the disasters that aren't...
What a pick-me-up.
I know,
right?
exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
This is exciting.
That aren't pandemics, because we've got all sorts of, from hurricanes to snowstorms to ice storms, mudslides, forest fires, that requires a very different kind of preparedness than we've done for this pandemic. But also we're going to talk about personal disasters.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for your home either flooded, and also that's about a 2 hour, as we learned from Harvey, that's about a 2 hour experience. I mean, you can lose everything in about 2 hours.
Yep, you
due
sure
to
can.
natural disasters.
So I want to hear from Eileen really quickly as far as who you are, where you come from. Give us like the 30-second.
The 30 seconds.
It can be more than 30 seconds. I'm not going to put you on the timer.
I grew up in upstate New York, so I am very much not a Texan by birth. I am one by marriage. I have two children, a 9-year-old boy and a 6-year-old boy. And
you've been here how long?
We moved here in the summer of 2006, so 14 years. When we bought our old house, we had a 5-year plan to be in Houston, and we have, and the house burned down at about year 5. And we decided that we were going to rebuild and start again. And so we've really sunk our roots into our community, and we rebuilt on our lot because we really loved
You have a great location.
our community and our location and our neighborhood. So we really wanted to stay.
And you were also pretty tight, I think, after I did, because like I said, I knew of Eileen at the time, but I didn't know Eileen personally at the time. But we had a lot of mutual friends, which is how we ended up getting to know each other. But my Facebook feed was full of statuses of people that were in her front yard, helping her pull things out, and taking the 1-year-old, getting him settled, which I believe you repaid when Harvey came along, because there were some of our another set of mutual friends from church. This is where James, did they go with him during the fire, and then you took them in after the flood?
Somewhat. I mean, the church connection and the community connection, it has gone around and reinforced itself in the lessons that I learned in the fire. I have paid back to friends in the flood, and storing things and rescuing things, and all of that is
that's actually a big neighborhood thing that happened, or a big community thing that happened. So Harvey hit, and again, by this point, I am good friends with Eileen and this other gal, Christy. I remember watching as it actually happened. So as Christy's house flooded, and she's actually putting her 2 children on floats to take them down the street to your house, which is on a little higher ground and also was a newer build. So, right. So she's also asking Eileen, because Eileen knows, okay, well, what do I do about the insurance stuff? Because she is the most organized person we know?
Yes.
I think so.
That's an understatement. She's amazing.
And so she starts pulling information from you, and you're sending information to her. I, shortly thereafter, became the volunteer coordinator for our church response.
I remember this.
Right, you remember this? And I'm pulling from Christy's spreadsheet that she so we were handing that out as a resource. Here's the insurance checklist that you need to go through. Here's the repair checklist. So because we had such an organized parishioner who was able to pull on Eileen's store of experience, we had a quick response document in 3 days. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
I think
awesome.
the contents list for my house has actually been circulated to at least 50 people, which is a really bizarre thing to say, but that's, we'll get to that later. But knowing the contents of your house is a real trick and a disaster.
You know what could be a disaster? If Leslie doesn't talk into the microphone, because we've had this conversation where
I'm making eye contact with Eileen, and
she's doing this. She's doing this. Okay.
Let's give me a little bit of a break, because this is the first person besides you that's been in the house in 2 months. I'm really excited to see her, and I can't even hug her.
All I'm asking is a little bit of a shoulder turn and a lean in. That's all. That's it. That's what we're looking for.
I'm practicing. Okay. For those of you who are just listening, I'm practicing. It looks like I'm skiing around the microphone.
Okay, we're laughing about this because we literally had like a 30-second conversation about it before we started. So that's my disaster.
So Eileen, in case you thought he was actually scolding you, no, it was me.
Nope, she's right on target, Red Leader, right on target. All right, so I think where we should start is sort of your area, right? Where do you live? Because every different area has a different set of circumstances, right? What you prepare for in California isn't going to be the same thing you prepare for in Texas, isn't going to be the same thing that maybe you prepare for in Kansas.
Correct.
Right?
And actually, Ryan and I are a little excited about this one aspect because, as the lockdown happened, there's so much of our content switched to dealing with realities of life. This was actually planned because here on the Gulf Coast of Texas, it is time to start hurricane prep. So we were actually going to do a disaster prep episode. So we're kind of back on target. But this year it's a bit different because everybody's still in pandemic and lockdown mode. And that's a different prep. Like, for instance, I think I said this in one of the early pandemic episodes, but basically I just did my hurricane prep a few months early with the idea that I was also most likely going to have my freezer, right? Because that's a huge difference. But not everybody lives on the Gulf Coast and is worried about hurricane stuff. There's other areas, California is worried, has mudslides, earthquakes. The entire West has to deal with wildfires usually on a seasonal basis. Each of these disasters kind of comes with their own setup profile and their own season. So you need to think through, okay, so what are the disasters in my area? Where do I live? What likely happens here? Am I in Tornado Alley in Oklahoma? So for my disasters, what kind of lead time do I get? For instance, one of the lucky things about, and you can probably verify this from coming upstate New York down to Texas, hurricanes, at least with modern radar, they give us lots of warning.
Yeah, you're like talking about it for 2 weeks. Hey, you better watch out next Thursday. Whew, we got one coming in. You know what I mean? And then it veers off or it goes someplace else or something like that.
There was a really huge, nasty, it was the late 80s, and it was Hurricane Gilbert, I remember, because we were in the high school, First of all, it's a sunny, gorgeous day. We're still practicing outside, and we're singing a song, 1, 2, Gilbert's coming for you.
That was even in key. I'm
okay,
shocked.
you can be shocked.
Well, by your own admission,
I'm almost tone deaf. Yes.
That was. I think I'm rubbing off on you.
Okay, fine. Certainly, one of my daughters can sing. Anyway, so we had this whole song, and then Gilbert ended up veering off, and he went in a very unpopulated, but we were worried about him. So for an entire week before he's coming in, or maybe it wasn't quite a week, but so some of them give you a little bit more warning. Forest fires, you kind of know where they are, and then depending on where the wind goes, you probably don't have days warning, but you have a little bit more. Earthquakes tend to hit like bam.
Yeah.
Tornadoes.
Y'all,
you got minutes.
So I lived in Indiana for almost 2 years. And when that siren goes off, it is one of the scariest things that like I have ever encountered. I mean, it goes off. It is so loud, and I mean, you basically have minutes to get to where you need to go. The idea of prepping is save my life, because you can't see where it's coming from.
Right.
You don't know what's happening.
By the time you can hear it, you're in big trouble.
And then all it sounds like is a train. Like, I mean, it's the only way that I can describe it, is it sounds like a train coming through your living room. Like, thankfully, my house didn't get hit. It was a couple blocks away, but it did. It was close enough that it was whoa,
right.
crazy.
So a lot of this stuff has to do with pre-prep, what you need to do beforehand, and so then some major. Once you kind of think through your region and what kind of, a bit like what's popular. Listen, I'm saying but like in upstate New York, what, ice storms,
snowstorms. That's
right. And
Nor'easters.
the nor'easter, but again, you see them coming on the radar, and you have time. It's the sort of the middle of the night, like you get ice instead of snow. That the power lines all go down, and you're like, oh, okay, now
right. Well, and power in all of these natural disasters, with the exception of a pandemic, power's a big deal. Power's a big deal. One, while the disaster, if it's fire, if it's water, you might even want to shut your power off prophylactically, just to be, and I think we're going to get on this in personal disasters, because I think with the fire it did. And I do know from Harvey, as the water starts rising in your house, you want to go ahead and shut your power.
Kill the breaker.
Yeah, kill the breaker. Absolutely. But there's also...
Why do you want to kill a breaker, for those that are uninformed?
Water and electricity don't mix so well. You.
Yes. Right. Well, hey, I'm just saying, if I'm fresh out of college and I'm right, maybe I don't know that. I don't know that.
Right. I mean, most modern homes are built with certain safeties in mind, but you never. It's much better to be safe and go ahead and kill the breaker than wade into some water and get electrocuted.
Right.
Or have it spark somewhere, and then, by the way, you're flooding from below and your attic's on fire.
Right.
Which has happened to people.
Yes, which has happened to people. Exactly. So depending on the type of disaster, you might want to turn off your power while it's going on. But then after the disaster, power is one of the big things that you have to deal with, because in many, many of these natural disaster situations, you can't rely on your freezer. You can't rely on your normal heating and cooling. So you need to have alternatives for those. And then also, we now use our tablets and phones all the time to communicate. So you need to have on hand already charged, all sorts of portable crank. There's crank, there's solar devices. I mean, you can go on Amazon and you can look for a whole bunch of stuff. And would you advise redundancy?
Absolutely.
Get more than one
car charger,
than one type,
an external, gas can for your car, so that if you run out of gas on the road, if you run out of gas in your driveway while you're charging your phone, you can just fill it back up. Redundancy is
right. So power is something big that you want to consider when you're doing your prep work. Also, after disaster or even during, you're going to want to cook. You need to be able to feed yourself, cook somehow, or have food that you don't need to cook. You want to be able to clean yourself and your clothes. Let's see, I have my list here. You need to cook, have clean water, clean your clothes and yourself, power for communications and any sort of perhaps heating or cooling devices, or something to provide some relief so you don't melt or freeze. I think that's probably even bigger in ice storm situation. So for instance, if you live in an area of the country where it's possible that you could get snowed in your car, you need to have, say, thermal blankets.
The standard equipment when I got my driver's license was a 10-pound bag of rock salt in the trunk of your car, an ice scraper, a blanket, a pair of boots, a pair of gloves, and a hat.
Oh.
All right, you're
Am I speaking your language right?
Oh my gosh. Eileen, it's like, I wouldn't even consider gloves or a blanket right now. But yes, my grandfather, when I got my license, the same kind of situation, you had this bag, right? And it had all the things that I think you even had road flares in that one. You know
chains.
What I'm saying? Yep. Chains. Yeah, you had to have chains. But also, and I know
to
that
the Texas
we
girl.
Yeah, I know that we danced upon it a little bit, but a full tank of gas when you know that a disaster is coming is critical. You don't want to get hung up at the gas station.
No, whatever the seasonal disaster time is in your area, if it's the summer for hurricanes, whatever, it's the winter for ice storms and everything else, never let your tank get below half.
Yeah, don't ever be the person that like the gas light goes on and then you pull into your driveway and you're like, oh, I'll just get it tomorrow.
Right.
Because there's a significant chance like it ain't happening. It's not happening. So I wanted to say that because my grandfather's in heaven, like, tell them to have a full tank of gas right now.
we do the same drill down here, hurricane season. When your tank starts to hit around half, go ahead and fill it up again.
Yes. Okay, so we talked about
power and communications, cooling and heating devices. You need to have medical supply, first aid kits, basic ibuprofen, acetaminophen, your basic drugs, and any of your prescriptions that you need in your area's seasonal disaster time. Make sure you're not running low on any of your regular prescriptions. Mm-hmm. Sometimes your insurance company, because I've done this before, they'll even say, yeah, you know what, right now I'll let you get double, or I'll let you get a 3-month supply worth. Go ahead and do that. Mm-hmm. Right. If you have the option, do it. And then the other things you need to think through are care for pets and elders that are around you, how to entertain your kids. Sorry, that was always a big one. Like if you're stuck inside in a snowstorm.
Have a deck of cards, an actual deck of cards,
that
an
requires
actual
nothing
book,
else.
crayons, and a bunch of paper. Like old school, analog entertainment.
Right. It doesn't require anything else to power it, to do it. You can play 20 different games with a deck of cards. Have a stash.
Right now, people are like, what? Cards? Games?
Well, no, I'm sure after the pandemic, enough people were playing poker and stuff like that. But also playing poker on your devices and stuff. No, remember, think through. You're often not going to have power after these disasters. An actual deck and besides, they're coming cool designs, and decks of cards are cool.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I would add is just when it comes to devices, most of them now have like a low power mode, or they have a battery saver mode. Like put those on right away. Mm-hmm. You don't know when your power is coming back. It's not like, oh, it's going to be on in 2 days, so whatever, I'll just peruse Facebook for the next 20 minutes.
After Hurricane Ike hit Texas, we had multiple people. Were you here during Ike?
We were here for Ike and Harvey, and we lost power for 8 days in Ike and 10 days in Harvey.
Right. And that that's not the longest I've heard from Ike. Yeah. There were a couple people that were, my sister-in-laws were doing other people's laundry like 2 weeks in post Ike because the power lines were still down.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll be the champion of the old school and the analog today. If you don't know your phone number for your 10 people that you would call first in a disaster, if you don't know those in your head, memorize them.
Yeah.
Because when I was standing outside of my burning house and my phone died in the rain, I had to bum a phone off of a stranger to call my sister. Thankfully, she's had the same phone number for 15 years. If she hadn't, I might not have known. She was getting on a plane to fly to Houston, and I needed to stop her from getting on a plane. Mm-hmm. And I had to use someone else's phone to do it. You've got to know your husband, wife, your mother, your sister, your best friend, the girl down the block, whoever your people are. You've got to know their phone numbers backwards and forwards so that if all of your devices die and you get access to a phone, you can still contact the people you need to talk to.
Right.
Strong. Great tip.
And
Great
honestly,
tip.
I've kind of forgotten that because we're about the same age. And when we were in college, how many numbers did you have in your head when you were in college?
Dozens, hundreds.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers that I called the most often, they were just and I've lost the ability to do, because I don't need to do that, because that little device, sorry, we're recording on my phone. So anybody who's
Trade
watching
secret
this,
given away. Awesome.
Is wondering why I'm, pointing at the camera all the time. It's because it's my phone. Everything's stored there.
It's there.
I'm embarrassed to say I have to, if I'm filling out school forms, I have to go check my kids' contact info. I don't know my 4 children's numbers by heart. And I kind of now know them all, but I can't necessarily keep them straight of which one's which. This is good advice.
Yeah, I know my wife's and I know my grandparents, and they don't even live there anymore. But I still remember the phone number. But that's it. Like I know Lauren's phone number. That's where it ends.
Right. And I know Jim's phone number because it's 2 digits different than mine.
Same
because
with
we got
Warren's.
them together.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
we got them
same
together
thing.
and then we got the same
thing. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we talked about the region. We talked about like some of the things that we need. So there is typically a great, so I always think of, this is kind of silly, but I can see sort of like the hurricane preparedness guide.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and I'm reaching over to Eileen's stuff right now. Yeah. Anyway, keep going.
Oh my gosh, she has 4 pages.
No,
How many pages do you have?
6.
6 pages.
No,
Okay.
she printed out a hurricane prepared. Like I was going to ask you, may I take your hurricane preparedness guide and post it on the website and share it? Because I was going to send you some links, to like the Harris County disaster preparedness. Because yes, local areas will have, depending on what kind of disasters you have, they'll have all sorts of prep lists. I like hers a little bit better. And besides, she's already typed it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Eileen.
No problem.
But yeah, so go through, if you live in California, they will have some entity or some lovely neighbor will have a prep list that they've built through, decades of experience. And then I'm sorry to say that this was actually last week, but some places will also have tax-free prep. So not this past weekend, but the weekend before was Hurricane Preparedness Week. So if you're buying anything on the county's list, it's tax-free. And they only do it for 3 days, and it was the last 3 days. But usually about 6 weeks, 2 months before an area's disaster season starts, there might be incentives to have people go ahead and prep, and there might be some tax incentives like that.
So you're telling me I could have gone and gotten like a generator and it would have been tax-free?
Correct. Sorry.
Swing and a miss.
Sorry.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Yep. Ouch. Okay, cool. Very, very, and one of the things, and it's here in the show notes, and I don't know if this is where we're going with this, but I can remember, and it's happening now, but I can remember I became very friendly with my neighbors during Harvey, right? Because you're all sort of like in this together, but it's different than like what we're going through now. It's in the sense of you're literally in most cases on an actual island.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, and the pandemic has been very different in 3 major ways. 1, power. We've had, pretty much everybody's had power this whole time. 2, we're now 2 months in plus, and usually these natural disasters, 2 weeks, before you're kind of back to sort of like if you were actually damaged, if your house flooded out, you're not totally back to normal, but everybody else around you is, right? And then the other big one is in the pandemic, we haven't been able to come together and rely on each other. And almost in every other natural disaster kind of situation, except for maybe snowstorms where you get locked in your house, it's some of my best memories as a child are post Alicia, which was a major hurricane that hit Houston square on the nose in the early 80s. And we were without power in my neighborhood for about 6 days afterwards. And there were trees falling everywhere. So all the dads are out with chainsaws and wherever. And we're setting up barbecue pits in the middle of the street because, of course, you need to eat through your freezer first. When you lose power, then you have to eat your perishables first. So they're handing ice cream cartons and popsicles to the children because we don't want it to go to waste. And so just go ahead and gorge on it. And we're barbecuing up everything in everybody's freezers. I was like, it was awesome. It was awesome. And the pandemic has been very, very different in that, I haven't seen you in 2 months.
This is the first time I've been outside of my house in another person's house in 2 months.
Exactly.
It feels very weird and kind of decadent and a little bit scary all at the same time.
I don't know how I should be feeling right now. I'm confused myself.
Right. So usually these disasters can kind of bring us together and can they help you get to know your neighbors.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is, we've talked about it, how awful I am at building a community with my neighbors multiple times. So he
doesn't know all of his neighbors yet.
Except I will say that we have taken major strides. And even last week we had a neighbor, they're like, outside in our backyard, you know, and I was like, if you guys want to come over and
So you did the whole Wilson thing?
Yes.
Talking over the fence?
Exactly,
Awesome.
right? And just to start, because you need people around you in these kinds of situations, right? You need people to rely on, you know, and it's terrible because I had forged a relationship with the gentleman. I sort of live on a T, right? And he was down the road and to the left. And every day or when we were in Harvey, we would sort of like come together and we would talk about like what's been going on, how's your family, da 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 da. And then Harvey went away, not a word since. Right? It's awful. I'm throwing myself on the sword to say like, don't be like me. Okay.
And I think we all have situations like that. I mean, but yeah.
But in these kinds of disasters that we're talking about, you know, these are the people that, hey, this guy had a big truck and he went out and he got my mother-in-law because there was no possible way for her to leave her house unless it was by boat or by basically a monster truck. Right. You know what I mean? Like that. So it's that sort of thing. So it's critically important not just to get to know your neighbors because you want to build a sense of community, and you do, and you should, and we are. Right. But also in these kinds of situations,
it really pays off in these kind of situations.
Yes. Okay, so we're moving on.
Right.
We're moving on.
Okay.
Personal disasters.
All right.
Here comes the heavy lifting for.
Well, and I'm honestly, I'm going to turn a lot of this over to Eileen because I've not done this one yet. My house is not flooded. We stayed dry during Harvey. I've not done the fire thing. So.
I kind of just want like just the overview. Like I know we sort of like touched on it briefly, but almost in a comedic way. But really, like let's get to the nuts and bolts of it. Take us through what happened, what the losses were emotionally. I mean, just give it to us. Give us the big picture.
Okay, so this was my son's first birthday, which is just sort of an added special little caveat to the whole story. But it was his first birthday. We had a little celebration in the morning. My husband went off to work. My mother was in from out of town. This massive thunderstorms comes rolling through our neighborhood, and I'm watching it. We had huge picture windows in our back den, and I was watching it roll towards us.
I love doing that.
And I will say the lightning was like a form of lightning I'd never seen. You think of lightning as a bolt, and this was more like lightning as an octopus. It had tentacles in 10 different directions. And I was watching it and it was like, ooh, that one hit like 2 blocks away and that one hit a block away. And then I was like, I won't say what I said because you'd have to bleep it, but it hit the house. And I knew that in 2 ways. And this is sort of my first pro tip particularly on a fire or lightning strike is I had babies. So I had plug protectors in all the walls, and those things shot out of the circuits like popcorn, just flying across the rooms. And I heard a light bulb explode upstairs. And so I handed the baby to my mom. I went upstairs. I look at the light fixture in the bathroom. The light had exploded. I literally took a picture with my cell phone, texted it to my husband, and said, I think we're going to need an electrician. Understatement. I then, it smelled like burning hair. And I went and I checked all of the attic crawl spaces. I opened all the doors. I looked for smoke. I looked for fire. I saw nothing. I went back downstairs. I checked on my mom and the baby. We had an interior hallway that I had sort of blocked them off in. And when I opened the door back to the main house, there was black smoke pouring out of the air conditioning vents. At which point I screamed. I shuttled my mother out the front door with the baby, my purse, the car keys, and sent them to go sit in the car while I sort of tried to assess a policeman came, a neighbor came. It was like all at the same time.
What time of day was it?
It was at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Got it. So it's not even, it's dark from the thunderstorm, but it's
dark
not night.
Dark from the thunderstorm, but it's not night. Thank God, because realistically, if it had been 4:30 in the morning, there would have been people sleeping in the bedrooms upstairs in the black smoke, in the dark, not knowing, all of the things that could have been. But so my first pro tip is if you are in a building that you think /know has been hit by lightning, the very first thing you do is call the fire department. Don't pass go. Don't wait to see flames. Don't wait to smell smoke. Call the fire department and say, I'm in a building that I'm 90% sure has been struck by lightning. Would you please send people to come? It's their job. They know what they're looking for.
Right. You don't.
I don't. And realistically, the way I described it, all of that elapsed over about 10 minutes. A neighbor about a quarter of a mile away also got hit in the same lightning storm. It hit their gas line, and so their hot water heater became a blowtorch. They knew, like that they were on fire. They called the fire department.
That's terrifying.
Terrifying. But they knew. The fire department got to their house and put the fire out, and they had several rooms damaged that needed repair versus a fire that has a 10-minute head start on the fire department. That then, plus the close-in fire department were already at my neighbor's. So I was getting fire department from further away. It was about
fire had 25 minutes.
25 minutes before it got much attention. And at that point, it was the entire second story, half of the first story. When the insurance adjusters finally got hold of it, they were recommending that we rebuild by shearing off the second story, peeling off the brick of the first story, and reframing the entire house on a 60-year-old foundation in Houston, which if anybody knows anything about foundations in Houston,
means it's
already wonky. We were waiting for the drought to pass in order to re-level our foundation because the cracks were in the walls. And so we were just like, peace out, tear it down, scrape the lot, start again. That's a really that's the fire hose version of what happened to us. And so it was terrifying. It was crazy. Some of the weird things that I learned, like we were lucky in a sense, our back door, because of the drought, had been stuck shut. So I wasn't using my garage.
okay.
If I had been using my garage, my car would have been in my garage door down, power gone, can't get the car out. So not only would I have then, and I hate using this term, but it was true. We were homeless. I mean, we became homeless in the blink of an eye.
Hours. Yeah.
And had my car been in the garage, the only car we would have had would have been my husband's car. So you can pile loss upon loss. So that's just another pro tip of know how to open your garage door without electricity. There is a pull tab and a mechanism by which you can open your garage door and get your car out. Know what that is.
Right.
I didn't know it.
And
I
go
was
through
lucky.
your house and assess a lot of those things. What are some of the mechanical things that happen in this house that we do by power, by a flip of a switch, that I'm going to, be it, blinds or, like some houses have various different things that you can use. You power things up and down. Figure out how to do those without
power. And so that, that was a sort of a minor one, but it was just by happenstance that my car wasn't in a garage. If your car had
been in the garage, it wouldn't have been a minor one.
Correct, because I would have lost my car too.
Right. The 5 minutes that it would have taken you to figure out how to do that in the middle of the emergency would have, you would have bolted. You would have said, forget it. My car's not worth it.
Exactly. Well, and in reality, like the weird thing is that, I had a 1-year-old. My husband didn't have a car seat in his car. The car seat was in my car. So like we would have lost the car seat. Like then we wouldn't have had a way to transport the 1-year-old to grandma's house for all just little things. But
those little things were huge in the days after, because now your days are filled with talking with insurance adjusters and trying to find a place to live.
Live.
So the last thing you need is to worry about the car seat.
Yes.
You need some things to still work.
And so, so some of the big things that we learned through this, after the fire, one of the first things that the insurance company started asking us to compile was an inventory of our home. I know you all did an episode on insurance, but there are the 3 parts to a homeowner's policy. It's the actual physical structure of the property. It's the contents of it, but then there's also the loss of use. So we lost the use of our house. There's a part of your insurance policy that then paid our rent for a period of time while we recovered. They sort of gave us enough time for what they estimated would be a rebuild, because that was their recommendation. Ours was a tear down,
right.
But it was a negotiation. But there's those 3 parts. But someone says to you, you're looking, literally I could see the sky from 5 rooms in my house. I had no skylights. I had a second floor.
So it was a lack of roof.
I could see where there was a bedroom above my kitchen. I could see a pine tree, a badly burned pine tree. And someone says to you, write down the contents of your house. And by the way, this is another part of that. I faithfully backed up my phone, my computer, my external hard drive sat on top of the hard drive. Does you absolutely no good when it's sitting on top of something and burning up. So a fireproof safe, a good size fireproof safe, you can get them at Walmart, at Target, at Sam's Club, at Costco. They come in different sizes. Go one size up from what you think you need, spend the $100. It is the best $100 you will ever spend. Right. Put all of those digital backups of things and back them up faithfully in your safe. But I lost all of that. So I was trying to do all of it from memory and saying things like, hey, Mom, would you email me the pictures that you took when you were here last Christmas? Because in the background of the picture, I can get a sense of the bookshelf that was behind the couch and try to count the number of spines on a bookshelf from a picture. The best advice I can give on that is I would say at least once a year, maybe twice a year, if you make big purchases or like go all out at Christmas time or something. Walk through your house with your phone on the video. Every cabinet, every drawer, every shelf, just slowly pan across it and then back that up and store that. You know, if you do an actual physical hard drive backup, you can put it in the fireproof safe, put it in your desk drawer at your office, right, or at your spouse's office, or
and these days hard drives are cheap. Keep one in your fireproof safe. Keep one at the desk drawer in the office. Keep
one in the cloud. I mean, you know, you can have, again, the redundancy.
Right.
But
and also an additional one for the insurance. So you buy a nice piece of art, say, take a picture, because, you know, I've got the receipts down, and actually this is on my to-do list for various things. I just, you know, you don't think about these things. You don't, and so now I need to, because I want one of the kids to do it, but go through the receipts that you save for proving the value of the contents of some of your bigger valuables. You might want to keep those receipts. Great, keep the receipts, but should a fire or flood happen, most likely you're losing them. Take pictures of them and store those. Same thing. So you've got the videos of your rooms, and for some of the bigger ticket items, you have the receipts.
Yeah, and even like my insurance company, they let us upload things to the cloud, right? So you can make a big purchase, you take a picture of it right there, you take a picture of it in your receipt, upload it. Cool. You know, it's another redundant system, you know, just in case. Because like this is one of those things. Yeah, I will never, ever look at the statistic. It's like, well, you know, you're 27 times more likely to get struck by lightning than, right? You must hate when people say that. You know what I mean? Like, I never want to hear that ever again. And I'm thinking, two people in your neighborhood just bang, bang.
Oh, and it happened 3 years later. I mean, I now, like, I am now the sort of the person in the neighborhood that when your house gets struck by lightning, everybody calls me.
I mean, because it's unbelievable.
It's crazy. But one other sort of, and this is, I look back on this is funny. I remember there's different people that we interacted with in this process. And one of them was responsible for like all of our clothing, getting it out, cleaning it, trying to restore it, helping us decide what to keep and what to get rid of. And the woman asked me, how many t-shirts do you think you owned? And I said, I don't know, 20. And she laughed. And I was like, what are you laughing at? And she's like, honey, there's like probably 120. And I was like, what are you talking about? But then I thought about it, and I had the t-shirts that I sleep in, and you have your workout t-shirts. And I just had a baby. So I had a whole maternity wardrobe, and I had a working wardrobe from when I was a professional, but I hadn't been working in a couple of years. Like
suddenly the class of cotton knit tops was large. And you don't think through your, you know, when you're thinking through your closet, you think of what you're wearing right now.
Of course.
You don't think of, you know, I had a full length wool winter coat from when I lived on the East Coast. When's the last time I wore that thing? Yeah. when I go to the East Coast for Christmas. But I wasn't thinking about that. And so you can very easily miss, and there's no system that's going to be foolproof. I mean, absolutely. And that was where I was joking earlier that list that I created, that I think by the end of it, and I'm talking like this was in like 6 or 8 point font. It was 14 pages long of item by item, estimating a cost, that was a whole nother fun barrel of monkeys. But that list then I shared with Christy after the flood and other friends after the flood. And then it went to other people and to other friends who have had home fires.
Christy made a template for people to fill it out on their own as their houses were flooding, because something about flooding, the water can rise a little more, and it certainly did during Harvey. It rose a little more slowly. So sometimes people were categorizing this contents of their house as it was flooding. Like there was a lot of that
as it was flooding.
on.
I mean, that was sort of, and a really weird thing for us. We had gotten taken on some water in the house because of construction issues in our old house in Ike. And I had stored a lot of things in those big giant plastic bins that like you think of sending your kid to college with.
Which is totally great for a flood.
Which is totally great for a flood. But I had a lot of stuff stored in those during the fire. And the weird thing is that some of them did not burn up. So I actually have photographs that I had never unboxed from Harvey that survived the fire, whereas everything digital was gone.
Unbelievable.
So you know,
weird.
so it's just a weird thing, but that's sort of on my list of sort of more hurricane prep is have like a dozen. I mean, if you can afford it, have a dozen giant, 60-gallon plastic tubs that like, as the water is rising, you take those most valuable things, your wedding album, your kids' baby books, whatever it is to you, whatever those things are, and you throw them in those boxes and you put them on the highest surfaces in your home. And, when you were sort of asking like what, from a personal standpoint, it took a while, but I will say I got to the point where I could say, and I believed it, that, we lost a lot of things, but things are things and we survived. And that, my mom was safe. I was safe. The baby was safe. We got out. That was,
all the big stuff clicked.
All the big stuff clicked. But it is okay to feel sad and to mourn the loss of things because they were our things. They were beautiful things. They carried memories. I'm a person who like a thing, I can look at something and be like, oh, I remember when my grandmother gave me that when I was 6 and we were baking in the kitchen and she gave me the favorite, bowl that we were baking the cookies in.
Right.
And that meant something to me. And I don't have that anymore. And there are still times now, however many years later, because I don't do math, 9 years later, that like I'll open a cabinet and I'll be like, right, I don't own that anymore. Like still, it's much less frequent. But for a long time, you just go to get something and you're like, right, I don't have that anymore. I don't own that.
Into the morning can just kind of,
and
you can't let it overwhelm you, but you've got to give yourself a chance to
You do.
deal with it.
You do. And that's sort of another piece of advice that I give to people in these sorts of disasters, particularly something like a fire or a flood where you may only have your car left, or you may not even have your car if you didn't park your car in a 10-story parking garage in Harvey, you didn't have a car or a house. But as crass as it is to say money and gift cards, when all you have is a Honda Accord to transport your life, and there's already 3 people in it, like wanting to give people clothes, and everybody wanted to give us toys for the baby, and that was lovely. But at the same time, I had nowhere to put it. Right. And I didn't want to take it from my in-laws to then the place that we stayed at for 2 weeks to then the place that we stayed at for 6 months. And, like, it's just, you feel like a gypsy, or like
your experience informed a lot of our response at our church for Harvey, specific because she was one of the big proponents of no, we need to gather and we need to be able to give gift cards so that people can go out and get the things that they need, because disasters hit everybody differently and everybody has their own specific. You don't have a place to store all of the stuff. You certainly don't have the extra time to sort through any of it. So if you're one of those people on the other side that's trying to help out, remember, you're trying to actually be helpful, and it's not that they're being ungrateful about, oh no, I don't want those clothes. It's overwhelming. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, and sometimes the easiest thing to do is to get them or how many times have you had a friend that's lost a member of a family, and then their freezer is completely overrun with food that they can never, because everybody wants to help out and love it. So if you're on the helping side of it, try to think through what your helpee, sorry, very legalese there, what the person in need actually does need. I also know this, and it might be you that schooled me on this as well. Don't necessarily ask them, because if I run up, so Eileen's house just burned down 2 days ago, and I go to her and I say, what do you need? Oh goodness, she's got a list of 20 things, and also at the same time, nothing can come to her head because she's now got to assess what she thinks I'm capable of. So I've put the burden of on her of figuring out what I can actually give her, because she really could use the help. So sometimes it's also a matter of sorting, ask somebody else who has been through something similar that your friend has gone through, and ask them, which is how I ended up asking her about when we were losing stuff in the flood, and I was doing the volunteer stuff. I called her up and said, all right, talk to me about what people in this kind of situation actually need, because the last thing they need is another person calling them, asking them how you can help.
That's actually a really good segue to, I call it appointing a spokesperson.
And you are a spokesperson right now.
After the fire, especially in those first few days, I mean, I was a walking zombie, because I was still trying to parent a 1-year-old who was trying to figure out how to walk and who didn't understand what had just happened in his world. And deal with all, you're dealing with insurance adjusters and the fire department and all of these things. And so one is, as the homeowner or the renter or the person to whom the disaster has happened, limit down to you can count it on one hand, 2 if you absolutely have to, the number of people that you are dealing with. And people will come out of the woodwork. I mean, during Harvey in particular, because we were a one-off event where we were like the little island that something happened to, we didn't experience this too much, but we still did. I had random fire recovery people, they listen to the scanners and they call you. I heard your house burned down. I can do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. And I don't have time for you. So only deal with your insurance company, with the people that they send you to deal with whatever it is. Is it the recovery of property? Is it the mitigation of damage? Only deal with them. And have a friend or a relative that you can then say, all of the well-meaning people who have questions, who want to do things, call Susan.
Right. And by the way, I'm going to throw Eileen out here again, because she actually is, we have another mutual friend whose mother ended up, a routine surgery that the complications that you sign the paper at the beginning saying, these complications exist, right? All the complications happened. And so our friend was suddenly thrown into needing to help her dad care for her very ill mother. So Eileen became her spokesperson. And so Eileen's been coordinating. At the beginning, it was the food stuff, and then it was making sure the boys were all. And that's been, and here's the other thing she does. Weekly, she sends out an update so that all of us who are concerned about this friend's mother have an update of this is what's going on, so that our mutual friend, the daughter, can actually get on with the business of caring for her mother, caring for her father, and caring for her 3 boys and husband.
Yeah.
Because she can't, honestly, that's enough to be getting on with, don't you think? So the spokesperson thing, I've seen it work, and Eileen, just put your stamp on that, because it's awesome. And find a trusted friend, find a trusted family member who can help you with this, and then and she jumps out. She did. So when our friend's mom initially got sick, so we all heard that she had gone back into the hospital after surgery. Within a day or so, everybody's kind of trying to contact our friend and like, what can we do to help? Same thing. Or, hey, do you need me to bring food, or can I come get the boys from school or whatever? So within 24 hours, Eileen obviously checked with Brooke and then just jumped in and was like, all right, everybody, I've got all your contact. I've got all your emails now. All inquiries, anything you want to help with stuff. First of all, we've set up a caring bridge for food. They could probably use some donations to deal with parking at the medical center stuff. But I don't call them, call me. And I'll coordinate all of this, and I'll tell you what we need, what they need, and what they don't. And suddenly it gave our friend extra time to do the things that she needed to be getting on with.
Definitely. So that was so captivating. Like, I just sat here and I was just listening to Eileen's story, and I was like, honestly, it was hanging on every word. I thought it was so critical. And then all of a sudden I clicked over and I was like, okay, we're at 50 minutes. So we're gonna
5-0?
5-0. So we're gonna kind of like sprint to the finish here.
Okay, I'm looking for anything that we missed from our notes because we jumped a little bit around, but it's
definitely.
good.
So
it's
no,
good,
no,
and
it was-
I'm going to put her
Yes.
notes because she's got some great hurricane preparedness stuff, and she also has some before and after the fire, more detailed bullet points. But they don't just work for fires; they work for floods, and they work for they work for burglaries, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, two really quick things that I would throw in that are sort of random. One, after whatever your disaster is, you are still responsible for securing your property. I can't tell you like how the trauma of getting a phone call when I had taken my kid to Brenham to tour the Bluebell factory. That the local constable pulled 2 meth heads out of the burned out hulk of my house who had been pulling copper wire and smoking dope in my house for a couple of days, squatting. Not like we hadn't locked it and done our best to secure it, but we spent another $200 on more reinforced lumber and more padlocks because we were still responsible for it. So make sure that whatever it is, you are still responsible, and work with your local police department and constable to make sure that they're aware of the situation to be doing extra monitoring.
Yes.
And the other thing that goes all the way back to sort of more on the preparedness end, if you live in Tornado Alley, we call it in our house, the safety spot. It's the cupboard under our stairs. If during Harvey, we had tornado warnings, my kids had already been in that space, that had been familiarized with that space. They know that if the house gets struck by lightning again and starts burning, that they leave through any door or window they can get out, and they go 2 doors down and they stand in Jen and Eddie's front yard.
Right.
That's where they go and they stand and they wait for a grown-up. It's far enough away that it's safe, but they don't have to cross the street. Practice and plan all of those things in advance. If you're going to have to evacuate by your car in a hurricane, what's your route? What's your alternate route? Do you have it printed on an actual physical piece of paper? Because again, if your tech goes down, if the network gets overwhelmed and stops working.
And you can't actually load the map. Well, I have it on the map, but if you can't load it.
Do you know how to read a paper map?
Do you know how to read it? There's a good question.
Do you know what the legend looks like?
Yeah, exactly. If the map doesn't actually move and you can't be Joey and get in your map, what do you do? And I'm glad you brought up the evacuation thing, because this is something else I wanted to, my quick thing. If you were going to evacuate for things like hurricanes and other storms like that. Okay, first of all, you need to assess your family situation. If you are, you've got another friend of ours, during Harvey, as it was coming in, she had 4 children under the age of 7 at the time. She did not stick around town. She's like, nope, I'm just going to go inland to hire. I'm getting out of harm's way, because the thought of trying to evacuate later with that crew is
overwhelming.
If you are any high risk, if you are in a coastal area, if you have elderly with you, if you have young children with you, if you have medical issues that require, say like the use of, some sort of medical device that requires power, any of those things, evacuate sooner rather than later on the mere possibility. Go ahead and because by the time a government calls an evacuation, it's going to be messy. It's going to be complicated. You're going to get stuck on the road. So if you think you need to evacuate, go ahead and err on the side of caution and evacuate earlier rather than later.
Yeah, don't be the person that waits till the mandatory evacuation.
Yeah.
Go when it's the voluntary evacuation. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Definitely.
Right. And part of that is thinking through the kind of family and the kind of situation that you have. Because if you are a young, 25-year-old couple with no health issues and you're more inland, you're not, your evacuation assessment might be a little bit different.
Okay, so let's do this. Eileen, 2 minutes. What are the things that people absolutely need to know that you haven't covered yet? Like these are the must knows, or anything that you want to absolutely reiterate. You got 2 minutes. You're on the clock.
2 minutes. I'm on the clock.
Go.
If your structure is struck by lightning, call the fire department. Don't pass go. Do not collect $200. Call the fire department.
I love that.
Gosh, putting me on the spot.
I know.
I think we covered.
Yeah,
a lot.
You're recapping.
I'm recapping.
Yep.
Yes.
make sure that you know your your inner circle's phone numbers so you can contact them. Make sure that you have in your fireproof safe your passport, the deed to your house, a copy of your insurance policies, even if they're old and out of date because they get updated, birth certificates, social security cards if you have originals, those backups to your external hard drives, to your computers, blank checks. If you have like super valuable jewelry, that should be in there, or if you're not wearing it, or make sure that sort of stuff is where you can easily grab it and run with it. And that's the sort of stuff that, the first policeman that showed up on scene said, ma'am, if you want to grab something, grab it now. And I very stupidly started to run up the stairs, which was towards the fire. And he grabbed me and he said, no, I meant like right here where I can see you, but, which I can laugh at now, but you're fireproof safe. Like that is the, granted it could live through the fire, but like you want to be able to grab, and when you have a longer period of time, like in a hurricane or whatever, know the thing, like have a checklist of the things that you want to grab and go. Because you really don't want to, the first time that you want to think about what you need in an emergency to evacuate with
is not while the emergency is
happening. Exactly. It's
Definitely.
not when the boot is at the back of your head.
That's good.
So
my favorite tip that you gave was this idea of the slow recording around the house. I mean, how much time and energy would that save if you just said, you know what? I'm documenting, like, this is my purpose. My purpose is I'm documenting everything that I have. And I could just see that being a tremendous help down. I mean, when you said that, I thought, oh my gosh, like what a lifesaver that would be.
Well, and the things that you forget in that sort of scenario, your Christmas closet. If you're into, like Christmas is my holiday. I had an entire closet dedicated to Christmas.
And
there's
probably
a
had some
lot
nice decorations.
of money in that closet.
Yes.
But you don't think of it because it's once a year and the fire happened in September. Christmas was not on my mind. Mm-hmm. The serving platters that you use at Thanksgiving, like those things you don't think about. So you want to make sure that you capture all that sort of stuff in that video inventory, or if you don't have video on your phone, still pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just something that you can go back and look at.
And it's such a time saver too, because you can probably do that room to room recording of your whole house in an hour or two when, writing it out the way that, they had to do it in the old days or putting it in a Excel spreadsheet. That would take hours.
Yeah.
Per room.
So we are going to post that online.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's going to be amazing. 6 pages of awesomeness.
6 pages of awesomeness, especially if you were in a hurricane, because we've got a hurricane prep list there.
30 seconds, Leslie.
30 seconds.
What do you, anything that you want to kind of put icing on this cake? Anything that you want to, some jimmies on the ice cream?
Okay. This one's a little bit, and I said, touched on it just a second ago. If you were trying to help somebody out in an emergency, make sure your motives are actually to help them. It's not about I'm helping you and I want you to acknowledge that I'm helping you. Mm-hmm. It's really think through what they need and try to anticipate that, and do call somebody that's been through it before so you can actually give them some real help. In so many ways, in so many things, it's not about you. But in this one, when your friend is going through a real crisis, it's really not about you.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. But it's easy to just kind of get into that because, you want to be congratulated. And aren't you a sweet friend?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, none of that.
Yeah, none of that.
Okay. So let's wrap it up. I mean, Eileen, I'm so thankful. Like, I never in a million years would have thought that this episode would have gone this way. Like, when I sort of heard about what we were doing, I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, great. This is going to be
buy batteries.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Like, right. But I think your account was so personal, and so much so that I lost completely track of time, which is like, honestly, like I don't really do that. Like I'm typically on the ball with that sort of stuff. So that's a testimony to your experience. And I think our listeners are absolutely going to benefit from that. So just really want to give a heartfelt thank you. Like that was absolutely awesome.
Pleasure.
So let's wrap up.
Okay.
If you're listening to us on Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, slap the like button, slap the subscribe button, leave the comments, the 5-star ratings. Y'all know what to do. It helps us out tremendously. Thank you so much for doing it. Leslie, you're laughing? You want to laugh at me?
I'm just-
Microphone misdirection girl? Okay.
Nope.
Cleaning it up in post. I said it one time, but that's it. Okay.
Fix it in post, Ryan.
Yeah, that's right. Leslie, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Leslie Loftus Tex, and I also run the show notes on the website. You can get me at leslie@lifeadministration.com. I also run the show notes on Pinterest, which is Life Administration. Instagram. Life Administration. I'm having to think through it.
Yeah, I know.
All those places.
Okay, well, I'm at Ryan Talon. I'm not going to spell it out because we don't have time. I have been Ryan Talon.
I have been Leslie Loftus.
And you have been awesome. Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.